Hello viewers, welcome to the eMath learning platform by Peter Ekaja. I am going to take you through substitution of operations and I will handle this in form of revision. In case you want to access my content online, simply visit YouTube and search for eMath learning platform. You will find my content there, and in case you do, make sure you subscribe to keep receiving updates whenever I upload new content. In case of any questions or clarifications, my contact details and the email are here below. Now let's go direct and look at a few revision questions on this. Question 1. It says, given that R operation S is equals to R squared plus S squared out of 10S, find part A, 4 operation negative 8, part B, 7 operation in brackets 4 operation negative 8. Now this symbol you see here is what we call an operation, but in a mathematics we can also call it asterisk. And in this case, we can always use a star or any other symbol, as we shall see in the next examples. Now, let's look at how we can handle part A. Now, part A tells us to find 4 asterisk negative 8. How do we find it? Let's look at our solution. Now, we are going to focus much on the formula which we are given. Remember, they gave us R asterisk S equals R squared plus S squared out of 10S. So from this very formula here, you're now going to look at your part A, which has 4 asterisk negative 8. What are you going to do? You simply compare. So when I look at this expression here and I compare it with this, I realize R corresponds to 4. And S corresponds to negative 8. So it means wherever there is R in this formula on the right hand side, we shall substitute for 4. And wherever there is S, we shall substitute for negative 8. That is the simplest way of looking at this. So we are saying 4 asterisk negative 8 is the same as 4 squared, which is just obtained by substituting for 4 here, plus where there is S, we are putting negative 8, but you also square it, which I have done here. Then you divide by 10 into S, but our value of S in this case is negative 8. And that is how I got this negative 8 in the brackets. From this point, you simply press your calculator carefully. And when you square 4, you will get 16. When you square negative 8, you get 64. And when you multiply 10 by negative 8, you get negative 80. But when you add 16 plus 64, you get 80, then divide by negative 80, which gives you negative 1. So the concept is just look at your original expression or operation, then compare with what you are given. So in this case, we said comparing R asterisk S with 4 asterisk negative 8, R corresponds to 4 and S corresponds to negative 8. So you simply substitute for those values in the given formula. Now let's move on to part B of the question. Part B says 7 asterisk in brackets 4 asterisk negative 8. Very interesting. Now what do you do here? What you do here is you realize that in this part of the question, especially the bracket 4 asterisk negative 8, we already dealt with it in part A. If we can see part A, we already dealt with 4 asterisk negative 8 and we got it as negative 1. So now saying 7 asterisk 4 asterisk negative 8 is as good as saying 7 asterisk negative 1. How have I got this negative 1? I got it by simply taking the value of this that we obtained in part A. Then from this point, you now again go back to your formula. The formula is R asterisk S, which is equals to R squared plus S squared out of 10S, which formula was given in the question. Now you compare it with 7 asterisk negative 1. When you compare this and R asterisk S, you realize R corresponds to 7 and s corresponds to -1. So it means wherever we have r, we shall put 7, and wherever we have s, we shall put -1 and -1 here also. So that is basically what we are going to do. So we have substitute for r as 7 and for s as -1. But make sure you maintain the squares in the numerator. Then in the denominator we had 10s, so it will be 10 times -1. When you square this correctly with your calculator, you will come up with 49 plus 1 divided by -10. Then after this, you simply add 49 plus 1, which will give you 50, and you get 50 divided by -10, which simply gives you -5. So it means that now our 7 asterisk 4 asterisk -8 is equals to -5. Why are we saying so? Because we already knew at the beginning here that 7 asterisk 4 asterisk -8 is as good as 7 asterisk -1. So it means after getting the value of 7 asterisk -1 as -5, it will be the same value of 7 asterisk 4 asterisk -8. So that comes to our answer. Let's go to question 2 and look at what happens. Now question 2 says, given that a asterisk b is equals to a squared plus square root of ab, find 1 asterisk 4 in brackets then asterisk 3. Now when you come to such cases which are directly to this point, you first deal with what is in the bracket for simplicity. Now if I'm to deal with what is in the bracket, I am going to be looking for 1 asterisk 4 first. How do I look for it? I am going to look at 1 asterisk 4, compare it with our formula a asterisk b. So what does it mean? It means a corresponds to 1 and b corresponds to 4. So what does it tell us now? It means that now wherever you have a in this formula, we are going to put 1, but of course you will have to square. Then wherever you have a again, I put 1. Then wherever I have b corresponds to 4. So I will put a 4 there. That is why you see me having 1 squared plus square root of 1 times 4. And when you multiply 1 by 4, you will get 4. So it means now 1 squared is 1, then plus square root of 4. But remember the square root of 4 will be considered to be 2. And when you add 1 plus 2, you come up with 3 as your answer. We have only found 1 asterisk 4. But the question was talking about 1 asterisk 4 then asterisk 3. Now that we have got all this as 3, all this is now going to be represented by 3, then we can now say that 1 asterisk 4 asterisk 3 is as good as what we have here. So we are saying that 1 asterisk 4 asterisk 3 is as good as 3 asterisk 3. Why are we saying this? Because 1 asterisk 4 was already found as 3. So now we have 3 asterisk 3. Then after this point now, you are again going to compare this very one with the original expression in the question. If we are to get back to the question, we had a asterisk b, but now that we have 3 asterisk 3, it means a corresponds to 3 and also b corresponds to 3. So wherever there is a, we shall substitute for 3, and wherever there is b, we shall substitute for 3 in this very formula again. So that will be our next step. So that is what we have done here exactly. Now when you square 3, you will come up with 9, and when you multiply 3 by 3, you will also come up with 9. But the square root of 9 is going to be 3, meaning we shall have 9 plus 3, which gives us 12. So we can simply conclude that actually 1 asterisk 4 asterisk 3 is as good as 12, and that is our answer. Let's move on to question 3. Now they're telling us, given that the operation this, now we are using a different symbol from a star, is defined by L asterisk M. We still call it asterisk, whether it's a star or any other symbol, as long as it is an operation. you pronounce it as asterisk, and if it is hard to say asterisk, you say operation. So L asterisk M is equals to 2L cubed plus M. Find -3 asterisk 4 asterisk 3. Very interesting. Now we said in question 2 that to make life so easy, always first deal with the bracket. So in this case, I have my bracket as 4 asterisk 3. What am I going to do? I will first say 4 asterisk 3, compare it with L asterisk M. This one tells me that L corresponds to 4. So L is equals to 4. Then M corresponds to 3. So if we have the values of L and M, you simply substitute here. But we can look at that in our solution. So we are saying we can again first deal with the bracket. So we are saying 4 asterisk 3 is as good as 2, this 2 that we have here, then L. But remember, our L corresponds to 4. That is why we are saying into 4 but cubed. Then plus, this plus that we have in our formula, M. But what is the value of M? M here corresponds to 3, so we substitute for 3. Then from there you simply simplify. When you get 4 cubed, you will get 64. But remember, you have to multiply it by this 2 here that you see here. Then after you add 3 to it. So this will be 128 plus 3, which gives us 131 from your calculator. So that gives us already 4 asterisk 3. But this is not what we were asked to find. We've asked to find all this, -3 asterisk 4 asterisk 3. But the mere fact that we have already got 4 asterisk 3 as 131, then it means -3 asterisk 4 asterisk 3 will be as good as -3 asterisk 131. Why? Because we already got 4 asterisk 3 as 131. Then from there again you do the comparison. You go back to the original expression, which is this again. So by comparison, L now is equals to -3. M is equals to 131. So it means when we substitute, where there is L, we shall put -3, and where there is M, we shall put 131. That will be our next step. So we have simply substituted our values in our formula that we had in the question. So now we have 2 into -3 cubed plus 131, because we said our value of L was -3 and our value of M was 131. So when you continue simplifying this, -3 cubed, when you press your calculator, will give you -27. So it means we shall have 2 times -27, then plus 131. When you multiply 2 by -27, you will come up with -54. And when you add it to 131, you will come up with 77. So it means that our answer for -3 asterisk 4 asterisk 3 is equals to 77. So that gives us our solution for that question. Let's go to question 4. Now this is another interesting symbol. So the mere fact that you identify that it is an operation, you still have to handle it in the same way as we have handled the previous examples. So this is again x asterisk y given as a third x squared y. Evaluate 3 asterisk 2 asterisk 3. We still maintain the fact that you have to begin with the bracket first to make life easy. So we shall say that 2 asterisk 3 is going to be a third into 2 squared into 3. But how have we got this? By simply comparing 2 asterisk 3 with x asterisk y. X corresponds to 2 and y corresponds to 3. So it means wherever there is x, we shall put 2. And wherever there is y, we shall put 3. And that is what gives us this first step that we have. Then the next step will simply be simplifying this. 2 squared, remember, is 4. And 3 remains as 3. So now we have a third times 4 times 3, which gives us a third times 12. How have I got the 12? By multiplying the 4 by 3. Then when you get a third multiplied by 12, using your calculator, you will come up with 4 as your answer. So it means 2 asterisk 3 alone is already 4, but we are looking for 3 asterisk 2 asterisk 3. So this part is already covered. We have got 4. So it means now the whole of this will be as good as 3 asterisk 4, because this is all 4. So that will be our next step. Then from this point, you again look at 3 asterisk 4. You go back to your formula. So this 3 now is going to correspond to x, and 4 is going to correspond to y. If you get back to your formula here, we can easily see that we have x asterisk y, but the other side we have 3 asterisk 4. So it means 3 corresponds to x and 4 corresponds to y. So we still substitute in the same formula, as we shall see in the next step. So that is what we have exactly done here. So we shall have a third into 3 squared times 4. But 3 squared is 9, then multiplied by 4. But 9 times 4 is as good as 36. Then you have to divide it by 3 because we had a third here. And if you press your calculator, you will come up with 12 as your final answer. So now it means we can conclude that 3 asterisk 2 asterisk 3 is equals to 12. And that gives us the solution or the answer to our question. Now with those examples, allow me now give you a simple exercise that you will try out. The answers are quoted in the brackets with red ink, and in case you find any different answer and you failed to see how it came about, consultations are allowed and at a free cost. Question 2 is also given as that the answer is given as positive or negative 6. And question 3 is also given as that. Question 4 is also given as that. And question 5 is given as this. All of them have their answers attached, and in case of any challenge, feel free to get back to me and we help each other. Allow me say thank you so much. We shall meet again in the next tutorial.